You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with Travis Reier on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. This is Southern Fried Sports with Bama Online senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
If I make it through this year, I think I'm gonna put this bottle down. I guess as time goes on, I'll grow to miss it less than I will now. And I think I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna go away for a while, till I can get this demon out.
It is 11 a.m. on a recovery-style Thursday. It's still a little damp outside, but nonetheless, we're doing good. I hope you are as well after the storms passed through the area yesterday. I want to say there was 14 tornadoes in the entire state of Alabama yesterday, so I hope you were not caught up in any of them, and if you were, that you and yours are safe and your property as well, because I saw the shingle situation down in Mountville, and that's less than ideal. I know that's an expense you just don't want to have to fork out in the middle of the spring, but nonetheless, we're here and we're doing good. Talking Alabama Crimson Tide sports, the NFL free agency, NCAA tourney, all of it. We got it all. And it's all brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier, right there in the as you're heading into Northport on McFarland Boulevard. And not too long ago, you know, me and Travis were talking about the chocolate-covered Peeps. Easter's just around the corner. It's actually the weekend before my birthday. I've always wondered if Easter would ever fall on my birthday. It came close this year. Not quite, but if the Peeps are your thing, they got them covered in chocolate, dipped in chocolate at the Peterbrook Chocolatier. What's your take on Peeps, JR?
I was just going to say, you're not holy enough for Easter to fall on your birthday, just saying.
That's probably the case.
I mean, I love you, but
that's probably the case. Nonetheless, I am joined today by our intern who's with me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It is J.R. Moore, and together we will form today the backup 60-Minute Men. Woo! J.R., I assume you're doing well after the storms yesterday, but how is how are you doing after that, and also how is the NFL free agency treating your Ravens? I feel like I should keep up, but I'm just excited about all the guys that are leaving your team.
yeah, I'm sure you are. Yesterday was kind of fun. I live on the first floor of my apartment that's really close to DCH, so I wasn't too scared. We came up to the station for a couple hours last night before it started to get bad, and they eventually canceled all the alerts, so I wasn't too worried. I fell asleep on time, so I was all right. But the Ravens, though, I'm excited. We got some more offensive line, especially after it looks like one of our offensive linemen is going to push his way out of Baltimore. That doesn't make me super angry. He wants to play a spot that he wants to play, Yeah. Same spot that his dad played in Baltimore. So, yeah, I can sense the disrespect he feels. So.
Well, it's just unfortunate timing. I mean, you got Ronnie Stanley first, and Stanley gets hurt.
And we paid him first.
Yeah, you paid him first, and why wouldn't you? He's a top 5 left tackle in the NFL. As much as I hate to say it, I always got to respect what you guys do in Baltimore. And you're actually a Maryland native, so you have a little bit more credence over your team maybe than I do with my Steelers. But nonetheless, as much as I hate you guys, I respect you. So we'll see what happens with Orlando Brown. He might be headed to Travis Reier's Jaguars, according to a rumor that I saw. I don't remember what the compensation was for that one, but nonetheless, that would mean that Cam Robinson would be on his way out to tie it back to the Crimson Tide, because there's no way he's moving to right tackle either.
I'm looking around the league for teams that have a quarterback that they're trying to protect. They're not going to do anything else about the quarterback. So there's only about 10 teams that I think that he would be happy going to. And I haven't looked at the Dolphins situation either. I would like him to go to the Dolphins, but I don't know what they have on their left side, so I could just be making up stuff out of nowhere.
They spent an 18th overall pick on their left tackle last year, so they
Absolutely.
got to give him a chance. I wonder about Arizona, a team that's making a lot of moves right now. I don't know what their left tackle situation is, but they're revamping.
Or if they have money for it.
Or if they have the money for it. But nonetheless, you played with Lamar Jackson, you can play with Kyler Murray. I know the Cardinals' offense is a little bit more up-tempo, but they're running around with two 38-year-old wide receivers too. So, I mean, they should be fine. I think that would be an interesting landing spot for the son of Zeus, Orlando Brown. So really kind of the biggest news so far today, while there have been some interesting signings. You get Patrick Peterson going to the Vikings. Juju Smith-Schuster seems to be now between the New York Jets and going back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. His market hasn't exactly been what he had hoped. Curtis Samuel signs a 4-year, $33 million deal or $34 million deal with the Washington football team, who I am just ready to have a name, by the way. I can't read WFT too many times on Twitter.
Apparently, they are supposed to play this season with this WTF name that is very close.
WFT.
No, it's WTF. That's very close to profanity. They're supposed to play out the season with it, and they are going to change it after. It's my best understanding.
Yeah, I've heard that one too, and it doesn't take that long to rebrand, guys.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. No. Joe Will, Ogletree, I know. Man, you guys, you got to get on top of your team here.
Like when they made a new NHL team, the Seattle Kraken, we only knew that they would have that team for like 8 months or something, and then they had a new name. Like they just made a new name.
I mean, new franchise and rebranding are slightly different, but
yeah, but they have to pick a new name at some point.
Right. It doesn't take that long. No matter what way you look at it. There's been plenty of ideas thrown out there. You don't have to change your color scheme.
You're not going to find new words to call them. Just pick one.
Just pick one. It's not that hard. There's 130 college football teams or college athletic programs that all have names.
If there was something cooler, we would have found it by now.
Right. Well, I mean, nobody had found Kraken until this year, and that's a pretty killer name, to be honest.
That's fire.
But really, the biggest news of the day, outside of some free agency signings, are Deshaun Watson is being accused of sexually assaulting a massage therapist in December 2020. He faces 2 civil suits filed by masseuses overall. This one is added on to create a third. So he now has 3 civil case files against his name, all within the past week. And, a lot of people want to say, well, this is Houston just trying to make him look bad. I don't know why Houston would want to make him look bad. If they don't want to trade him, then they want him there. And if they did make him look bad, then that would drive down his trade value. Now, listen, you don't know what anybody does in their own time. So these are accusations that should be taken seriously. And for me to immediately discredit them, probably not a great idea. But we also do have a good idea of who Deshaun Watson is based off of past histories. The best thing to do for anybody that's sitting in front of one of these here, this microphone, and for anybody that would potentially call a radio show, is to let it play out. You want to talk about where he's going to play football next year? That's fine, because odds are he will be playing football next year, unless he decides to sit out with the Houston Texans. But just let that play out, because I promise you, as a fan of a team with a quarterback who went through this and appeared really guilty in one of them, was never charged or convicted of anything, but everybody kind of has an idea. You just kind of got to let it play out. And, if he did wrong, condemn it for it. And if he didn't, let's leave the man alone and let cease with the nonsense, but let it play out first. The Alabama Crimson Tide set to take on Iona this weekend to start off the NCAA tournament. JR, I want to talk some brackets today. I filled out my bracket. I have since had to change it because I made a really dumb decision getting too behind my Cinderella. I sent my number 12 seeded Oregon State Beavers all the way to the Final Four, which involved beating Illinois. And I have since rescinded that thought and had Illinois instead crush the Beavers and punch their own ticket to the national championship. I still have Alabama winning because I'm a homer, and it is what it is. I do think they have a real good shot of winning it, though, so I don't think it's that much of a homer pick. But nonetheless, I do want to talk some brackets today. I would love to hear from you guys, the listeners, as well. 205-342-9904 is the Peterbrook Chocolatier hotline. You can call in. Tell us how your bracket is kind of filled out. You have only got a few more days before they're going to be put to use, and they're probably going to get busted this weekend. So, now's the time to lay down what, who's the Cinderella you've got going the furthest? Who do you have winning the whole thing? Who is Alabama beating in the Elite Eight? I heard, Jeff Spiegel say that Alabama would lose to Florida State in the Elite Eight, and I feel like many other Alabama fans do, and that's Alabama is destined to play Michigan. So, JR, what are some interesting things you've got going on in your bracket, man?
I think if somebody beats Alabama out of our region, it would be Texas. I see Michigan getting up there too, possibly, but I don't see them getting past their little gauntlet. Texas will get to face us before we leave this region, though.
Right.
With Shaka Smart, and they turned it on. Yeah, I'm not super excited to play Texas if we have to. Another game, well, all four games are pretty interesting today. If you want to take a look at them, it's Texas Southern, Mount St. Mary's. I actually grew up about 15 minutes from Mount St. Mary's campus. It's where we had our high school graduation. Drake, Wichita State. We have Appalachian State, Norfolk State, and then UCLA, Michigan State. Two absolute blue bloods in college basketball. UCLA, Michigan State. UCLA, the winningest program in college basketball history. That will be a great game, and that is a game that I have not even picked on my bracket yet. UCLA, Michigan State. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I know Michigan State was one of those teams that as the brackets were being revealed, Jay Billis was really fired up that they weren't an automatic or at least weren't part of the 64-team field. One matchup I do want to ask you about, because it's from your neck of the woods, the Terrapins from Maryland taking on UConn. There's some Alabama fans have some reservations about playing the Huskies, but what are the Terrapins looking like? And how should Alabama fans feel in that second round, regardless of who they got to play?
Personally, I would be more afraid to play the Terrapins. I guess that might just be because I grew up near the school, but
right,
man, their offensive efficiency is higher than UConn's. They played better talent than UConn's. They play in the Big Ten, so that means that they play Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois, all twice a year. All of these teams are in the top 25. If we're going with somebody who I would rather not face, it would be Maryland, especially because they're traditionally a basketball school.
Yeah, well, and UConn, obviously, a traditional women's basketball school. But nonetheless, that program has kind of seen a weird situation because they're no longer in the American Conference, formerly the Big East Conference. I don't know what their situation is now because their football team is an independent, period. But I mean that does change the procession of everything. As far as Alabama goes, maybe the SEC wasn't as good as it normally is, with Kentucky having a down year, but nonetheless, Alabama still had to play these incredibly good teams, and got a few blowouts against some really good teams. They blew out LSU and blew out Mississippi State. Had those opportunities, but also got to learn and grow by playing LSU closely a few times, by playing Tennessee closely, by losing to Arkansas. Those sorts of things that can really shape yourself as a team. But Maryland has to go through a similar situation, and though they're not as highly seeded, playing in the Big Ten, which is basketball haven this year. What was it? 9 Big Ten teams made the tournament this year.
I believe that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. And Illinois and Ohio State, Michigan, those are the three the big names this year. all of which, have a legitimate shot of going to the national championship and winning it all. So you got to watch out for these Big Ten teams.
You just talked about Michigan. I want to loop it back to that Michigan State UCLA game that's happening today. Michigan State just beat Michigan last week. Michigan is the number 2 team in the country. If you are not going to watch any sports games today, or if you're going to pick one, make it UCLA Michigan State. That is a great game.
Well, I'll be sure to do that. But I was shocked that because Michigan State beat Michigan, that not only that Michigan State did not get into the field of 64, but also that didn't allow Alabama to get that 1 seed. Because maybe had Alabama gotten the opportunity to play Arkansas in the SEC championship instead, that may have helped. I don't know how much. I've heard plenty of analysts, including Jay Billis, say, well, they were a 2 seed. There was nothing they could do about it. But I mean, for a Michigan team to lose to Michigan State is very highly questionable, and including those Big Ten teams. We haven't even mentioned Iowa, who I think is a serious powerhouse. They've got one of the best players in the entire country on their squad as well, and is a big man that, if Alabama had to square up with, Herb Jones can guard 1 through 5, but can he guard a true center?
Luka Garza could be a lottery pick, and a lot of people are arguing that he already is going to be a lottery pick this year.
So there's plenty to look into. You can definitely give the show a call, 205-342-9904 on the Peterbrook Chocolatier hotline, and join us in the conversation on the NCAA tournament. We'll keep up with what's happening in the NFL and free agency, maybe talk a little NFL draft. I don't guest host this show and not talk about the NFL draft. It could be the middle of September. We're probably going to talk about the NFL draft. Nonetheless, my name is Jacob Harrison, filling in for the one and only Travis Reier, and that's J.R. Moore filling in for me, producing the show. We'll be right back here on Southern Fried Sports on Tide 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
From the University of Alabama, this is Crimson Tide Today. It's a daily update on Bama sports, and it's brought to you by SunSouth John Deere, the preferred tractor equipment for Alabama athletics. Visit sunsouth.com or any of their 21 locations across the Southeast. Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Alabama men's basketball held Media Day on Wednesday in preparation for the NCAA tournament. Head coach Nate Oates discussed what's ahead this week for the Crimson Tide.
I've had a chance to watch quite a few Iona games. They're good. I mean, talk about winning in March with, experienced guard play. They got 2 fifth-year seniors. They're both really good, starting at the 1 and 2. They've got a freshman big that's got SEC size, and he's gotten significantly better throughout the course of the year. And then obviously they're coached by Rick Pitino, who's going to do a great job. He's one of the Hall of Fame coach, one of the best coaches in the history of the game. So
I'll have more in a moment.
Have you priced a new John Deere tractor lately? SunSouth John Deere has a full line of affordable lawn and tractor equipment this season. SunSouth John Deere has an affordable roster for everyone, from riding mowers to utility vehicles and lots of tractors. Stop by any of the 21 locations across Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, or visit sunsouth.com to find out what is right for you. Any budget, any project, SunSouth has you covered. Proud to be the preferred tractor equipment dealer of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Join us Thursday afternoon for Crimson Drive, presented by Regions Bank on the CTSN Facebook page. Streaming live at 2 p.m. Central, we'll have conversations with Crimson Tide basketball players Herbert Jones and Alex Reese, plus comments from Nate Oates and Greg Byrne. That's Crimson Drive, presented by Regions Bank, this afternoon at 2 p.m. Central on the CTSN Facebook page. And that's your Bama Update. Crimson Tide Today, brought to you by SunSouth John Deere. Crimson Tide Today is a production of the Crimson Tide.
The sky will stay mostly cloudy this afternoon. The high today 64. For tonight and tomorrow, occasionally cloudy and cool. Tonight's low 45, the high tomorrow 60. And on Saturday, a brighter day. The sky partly to mostly sunny, the high 63. I'm James Spain on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 56 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Tide 100.9. For more coverage of Alabama football, visit us at Tide100.9.com or download the free Tide 100.9 app.
The Crimson Tide will not be denied.
Plenty going on in the NFL when it comes to free agency. And a guy that needs his team to pick up a wide receiver at some point this offseason is you, J.R. Moore. And this wide receiver market is not going well at all. I'm Jacob Harrison. This is Southern Fried Sports. We're filling in for Travis Reier. Got J.R. Moore producing the show. And J.R. Moore's Ravens need a wide receiver, but nonetheless, it doesn't appear like they've really taken into the idea of getting Juju Smith-Schuster. Corey Davis already signed with the Jets. Schuster expected to either go with the Jets or go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Chris Godwin re-signs his tender, his franchise tag, for $15.9 million, and so far he's the highest paid wide receiver in this market so far this year. Kenny Golladay has not signed. He's visiting the Giants today. And is expected to get looks from other teams, including the Miami Dolphins. Curtis Samuel goes back to Washington to play with his good friend Terry McLaurin for the football team. So nonetheless, I mean, something's got to give in this wide receiver market, and it's kind of a bummer because I've been so happy for all of the guys, including Mike Hilton, who goes to the Bengals. All the guys from my Steelers to go out and sign these big, massive contracts. Bud Dupree got the best edge rusher contract, which was amazing. I'm happy for those guys, but nonetheless, Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't think he's a true number one. I think he can be your number one and catch 90 balls for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. But he's not an imposing fear type of number one like I feel like Kenny Golladay is, and maybe Juju wasn't aware of that. You think?
I feel like it's possible you're just going to take this as shade, and I believe it. But I think it's possible for him to be a number one in Detroit or one of the teams in L.A. or it's possible he could be a number one, but it depends on where he's going.
Right. Like you're not going to be a number one on a team that has two very solid number twos. I don't think.
I don't think he's going to go to Atlanta and beat out Julio.
Well, no. Well, I mean, you're not going to...
Just because he's younger and faster.
Right, no, he's not... Julio's not even the number one in Atlanta, by the way. It's Calvin Ridley. But nonetheless, I mean, obviously you're not going to go to a place that has a solidified number one and take over. I don't think that's what Juju wants to do either. I think Juju wants to prove that he is a number one, because even with 91 catches last year and 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, even me, I'm not sure if he's the number one.
But it's a passing offense. You have to account for that, man.
Right.
It's a passing offense.
And he averaged 8 yards a catch last year. Now, look, that had a lot to do with the scheme, but nonetheless, we haven't seen 99-yard touchdown Juju in a minute. We have not seen the speed and athleticism of Juju. We've seen some aggression. We've continued to see him, be a powerful runner. After the catch, we've seen him be a good blocker and all that sort of stuff, but nonetheless, haven't seen him act like a number one wide receiver. So that's very concerning. We've talked about this a little bit though. With AJ Green heading over to Arizona, that's a weird situation in and of itself. But as this market continues to shrink, do you think your Ravens can pull on Kenny Golladay, or is this going to be one of those situations where they're not going to have an opportunity? They're going to have to wait till the draft.
I would rather not rely on the draft. We've had this conversation before off air. I just don't think that the Ravens are very good at producing talent or taking care of the talent that they do draft and developing it. That was the word I was looking for.
At wide receiver.
Especially at skill positions, specifically at wide receiver, i.e. Wide receiver. Yeah, that's the main problem for us. So I would rather not address that problem in the draft. I'd rather try to go address that by trying to go get Kenny Golladay. But I would also like $1 million. So,
right. I mean, we've really gotten no indication on what Kenny Golladay wants to do, and I've seen fans of every team asking for Kenny Golladay. He was injured most of the year last year, but when he's been on the field, he has been incredibly dynamic. There's still going to be some question about whether or not he's a true number one wide receiver too. But nonetheless, I mean, if you need one, you need Kenny Golladay. He can be the guy.
He's definitely still has to be Baltimore's top target right now. Has to be.
Absolutely. Miami too. And Miami, they go out and they get Robert Foster. They've made some improvements across the offensive line. They bring in the running back out of Los Angeles, Malcolm Brown, I think his name is Brown.
Who ended up taking Philip Lindsay yesterday? It wasn't the Dolphins.
He just got released this morning.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So Philip Lindsay's still out there. That would be a good destination for him, is Miami too. Get some speed on that offense. But Tua's getting some help down there. Robert Foster gets that one last chance. I think it's his one last chance. Could be wrong. Kind of inexplicable not to get on the field last year with Washington, but nonetheless, if you needed a similar situation for the opportunity to get back on the field, Miami's it for Robert Foster.
Yeah, they didn't really have a really solid number 2 or number 3 receiver. They had Scary Terry, and then he got hurt for a lot of time, about like 3 or 4 games, right, last year?
Yeah.
So, yeah, he had the opportunity to come in, and he just didn't get on the field that much.
Didn't help that the quarterback situation in Washington was really wild up until the playoffs, or until Alex Smith took over, and they didn't even want him to do that, but he takes over, gets them into the playoffs, and then Tyler Heineke does his thing in the playoffs. But that team looks like they're on the up and up too, by the way, is the Washington football team. I think they've made some good moves. I like the Curtis Samuel move there. They do need to figure out what exactly the plan is at quarterback. They go get Ryan Fitzpatrick. That'll be interesting. That means that no matter what, Ryan Fitzpatrick will start games next year, because that always happens. Bizarre that he has spent 18 years in the league. Those first few weeks when you saw him fill in for Carson Palmer in Cincinnati, God, he was terrible. He was awful. I cannot believe all these years later he's still in the NFL. Nonetheless, plenty going on. So, JR, moving back to the NCAA tournaments and the brackets, and look, in my Elite Eight, I have got all number 1 seeds making it: Gonzaga, Michigan, Baylor, and Illinois. It's the odds though, right? Which I feel like it lulls you into that though. It makes you think that's the odds when the best teams never win this thing. You still have to take the precaution while you're gambling on what this bracket is, whether you're actually gambling or not, by taking the odds and taking the better team, right?
Well, while we're busy talking about taking the odds, 41% of number 1 seeds make it to the Final Four. Not 2 of them.
41.
One of them.
Wow.
One of them.
So you're saying I need to fix this thing?
I mean, I'm saying if you put all 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four, you're at least going to get one of them right.
Right. But if you only put one, your odds of getting one of them right goes down drastically.
Yeah, and about
so
half
technically,
your bracket
I'm playing
is
the odds. Yeah.
mess. So you have to look at the Final Four teams, at least the number 1 seeds, and look and say who is not making it to the Final Four this year. You have to go look at their injuries. You have to go look at how they play a neutral site. You have to go look at their adjusted performance. Because not all of them, I guarantee you, will make the Final Four. I guarantee it. None of them.
Who's your least favorite number 1 to make it to the Elite Eight or the Final Four, whichever one you want to go with? Is it Michigan? I feel like it's Michigan.
Gonzaga. I have Gonzaga losing in the Sweet 16, actually, to Virginia. I think Virginia can just slow them down. Virginia plays in the ACC. They've played Georgia Tech twice this year. Georgia Tech is a crazy team in 2021. And I'm going to go with that old adage where Gonzaga hasn't played anybody, Paul.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Gonzaga, but I did get them to the Elite Eight before Iowa took them out. Like I said, Michigan, there's people that think that Florida State is the team that could take them out. But I saw no path of resistance for Illinois, really. Not a believer. I had the Oregon State thing going, which was funny, more or less. That was just my Cinderella that I was going to stick with, so that I didn't have 4 number 1s. But I quickly realized the error of my ways. But that entire bracket, I like Oregon State, don't get me wrong, but they're just going to run into Illinois too quickly. Syracuse, West Virginia, Rutgers, and Houston. Not that I'm some aficionado. I just don't see how any of those teams are going to get by this Illinois team that is on absolute fire right now, right? I mean, so I feel like Illinois is possibly the safest number 1 that you can ask for. Baylor is up there too. Texas Tech and Ohio State in the same bracket as them does make that a little bit more difficult, though, right?
Absolutely, and I wanted to divert your attention to this game. It's in the same region, and it's an SEC game. Number 5 Tennessee versus Oregon State. You had already mentioned Oregon State. It's the round of 64, so it will be happening not today or tomorrow, but on Saturday and Sunday. Because whoever comes out of that will probably have to play Oklahoma State, the number 4 seed.
Who's
Oregon
downward
State,
trend.
Yes, and Oregon State just won their conference title.
Yeah.
So that Tennessee-Oregon State game is a hard pick for me right now.
That's why I felt so strongly about Oregon State. Like, I mean, I realized the error of my ways simply because of the Illinois factor in making them my Cinderella. I think they're still my Cinderella overall. It's just they're not going to get past Illinois, but I feel like they can beat Tennessee because they're on such an upward trajectory, really, I mean, buzzsawed through the Pac-12 championship, took down a good Colorado team to win that thing. The entire of the game day cast picked against Oregon State in that, despite them being on the upward trend. And Colorado got it handed to them. And Tennessee, they played very, very strong against both Florida and Alabama. And that, in spite of the fact of losing the kid with the facial fractures, thanks to Omar Payne, Fulkerson, I think his name is. They lose him, and they still managed to play really, really well. Had an opportunity against Alabama and just fell short. But I like Oregon State's trajectory against Tennessee. And then, we mentioned it with Oklahoma State too. That's a situation where they're on a downward trend, even though they're ranked highly. They have not been playing their best basketball either. So, now my bracket doesn't want to work, but nonetheless, I mean, that's kind of where I was coming from with the Oregon State thing. So when Oregon State and Tennessee play, which is a game I'm going to make sure to watch, I feel very strongly about Oregon State in that one.
And then that matchup that would most likely come right after would be Oregon State, Oklahoma State. I have this game matched up right here on my phone. It shows that Oregon State is going to have a better free throw percentage. That's something I tend to look at in the round of Elite Eight or Final Four. That will matter down the line in the end of games. Same thing with coaching experience. Like, honestly, if Nate Oates was going against Rick Pitino in the Final Four, I might give it to Rick Pitino just because he's been there more often. Just saying. This will also show you this app that Oklahoma State has a better true shooting percentage and strength of schedule and net ranking. So Oregon State, Oklahoma State is going to be a great game.
I think it is too. And I mentioned how strong the Big Ten is. You can't overlook the Big 12 either. In my Elite Eight, the way that I have it picked out, and we did make fun of me having all number ones. I have 3 teams from the Big Ten and 3 teams from the Big 12 in the Elite Eight. So, I mean, 6 of the 8 teams coming from one conference. I did have Gonzaga up there. I just didn't have anybody really compete with them. And then Alabama, of course. We'll come back. We'll talk about Alabama's defense and why that's going to be important. We'll continue to keep an eye on what's going on in NFL free agency. And like I said, we're probably going to talk about the NFL draft at some point, and it'll probably involve Mac Jones. Nonetheless, I am Jacob Harrison filling in for Travis Ryder. That's J.R. Moore filling in for me producing the show. This is Southern Fried Sports on Tide 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with BamaOnline.com senior analyst Travis Ryder on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Y'all didn't know a Yankee could pull that out of his hat, did you?
Toby Keith can come from anywhere. I love Toby Keith.
Tell him. So we gotta have a fluid opinion of Yankees. There's good ones. Even when they're Ravens fans, there's good ones out there.
I will tell you, I'm not like a full-blooded Yankee. My mom's from Arkansas. My dad's from Missouri.
Right.
My mom went to the University of Arkansas. I spent the majority of my summers in Arkansas, so I know how it is down here. I do like country music.
Right.
I'm just saying.
But none of that matters, though, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You came from I went
Maryland.
to a public school in Maryland. Yeah.
You came from Maryland and you live down here now to go to the university. Like that's all that matters, right? Speaking of all that matters, it is tourney season. It's bracket season. We're coming out with all these sorts of brackets, right? Did anybody I'm sure y'all saw this awful awful best SEC QB ever bracket. You saw this one, right?
I about got to do a fight on Twitter.
I did see that, by the way. And here's the thing. This thing is awful, right? Like, it's poorly photoshopped. Tua Tagovailoa's name is misspelled on it.
AJ McCarron's shirtless.
Yeah, he just wanted to use a shirtless photo of AJ McCarron to make fun of his tattoos, which, I mean, who doesn't want to make fun of AJ McCarron's tattoos? Don't get me wrong, but, like, come on.
I mean, who also wants to be a millionaire? Like
right. Like,
AJ McCarron.
what's the problem here? He very inconsistent on using more modern players compared to some 90s players. And even before that, I know that's the spat that you got into was about whether or not Joe Namath should even be on the list. Despite his stats being terrible, he did win a lot of games. So what I did yesterday, as I was listening to James Spann to make sure that the tornado was going to leave me alone in the middle of the city in Tuscaloosa, I put together a field of 60 quarterbacks and created a bracket of my own. And I got a little help from Mason Woods, the intern that's in with me on this show on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We got the field to 60. We tiered the players out, randomized the tiers, all except for the top tier. The top tier was Tim Tebow, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel. Those are the number 1 seeds, the 1 through 4 seeds, however you want to say it. And then we tiered them out, kind of overlooked them a little bit, and then randomized the players within those tiers, and built a field of 60 quarterbacks all time in the SEC. So I mean, Alabama's got like 8 quarterbacks on this thing. LSU's got 7 or 8. So we've got some variety in here, right? And with Missouri and Texas A&M, you only got the quarterbacks that actually played in the SEC. So you only got Johnny Manziel and Drew Lock from Missouri and from Texas A&M. So I mean, it's fair. I feel like if I missed a quarterback, I'm sorry. I'm a fan of one SEC team, and I'm 26 years old, almost 27. I haven't seen most of these guys play. Nonetheless, I scoured and put together a list of 60 quarterbacks, and that should tell you enough that there's only 8 quarterbacks from Alabama and only about 7 or 8 from LSU. That should tell you that this not overwhelmingly filled with just modern guys. So be on the lookout for that on Tide109.com. I'm gonna post that a little bit later today, and we'll actually go through the bracket through my Twitter account at JHarrisonOTE. So we're gonna have some fun with that, and we're gonna do a good bracket because this thing is terrible. We don't need all this dumb Photoshop that didn't work. We're not doing that. We're gonna have a good, legitimate bracket of the all-time of the greatest SEC quarterback.
And then he got himself suspended from Twitter.
Oh, did he?
I for like a day.
I saw him with another bracket this morning. I'm like, I'm only doing one bracket. I'm only doing one. I can only come in to save the day one time. So I said that we were going to talk about Alabama's defense as it pertains to the NCAA tournament. Now, as I've said before, I'm a budding college basketball fan, and this basketball team here in Tuscaloosa has a great deal to do with it. But nonetheless, good defense when you see it. And Alabama plays insanely good defense. But JR, I know you have a better pulse on the rest of the nation. So when it comes to Alabama's defense, we can all sit here and say, well, if John Petty gets hot from 3 and he can stay hot throughout the entire month, then that's it. Well, no, obviously. If John Petty's hot, this team is unstoppable. Every commentator, every analyst will say that. The problem is that that's usually not the case. We've seen John Petty get ridiculously hot maybe 3 or 4 times this year, right? And that's in stretches of games. But nonetheless, when it comes down to it, the reason Alabama won the SEC championship tournament came down to their defense, I believe. While they did make plays offensively, don't get me wrong, I'm not discrediting what they've done there. The defense is what kind of came through. Do you think that Alabama's defense is among the elite within this field of 64, and that's what if anything, that's what's going to carry them deep into this thing?
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to just add to it and say it was defense and their adjustments.
Yeah.
their ability to realize, like, okay, let's shoot 15 threes in the first 5 minutes, and only 3 of them make it, so let's adjust. This is where I usually get into that attack those gumps that like to say live by the 3 and die by the 3, because when we quote die by the 3, we start living by other parts on the court.
Yeah.
Especially our defense, which you wanted me to get back to. We do have a top 5 defense in the country. A defense which most people, when talking about the tournament March Madness on ESPN, is saying that is going to keep us in longer than we really need to. That defense will keep us in longer.
Well, I get the impression, and I've been keeping up with who wins this thing and kind of what's the deciding factor. And when I look back on like Texas Tech and I look back on Virginia, those were insanely good defenses, and those weren't the top seeded teams. Now, look, I mean, Alabama's a number 2 seed. Virginia got bounced as a number 1 seed, came back the next year and won the whole thing. And a lot of it had to do with defense. So I'm thinking, I don't know who else in this field has a great defense yet. I'll have a better idea as we get further into the tourney and I've seen more teams play. It's just the best opportunity to play to see these teams play against excellent competition. I feel, but to get an idea of what the field is going to look like defensively, I'm not sure if there's, if there is anybody that can hang with this team defensively, but Alabama, at the very least, I feel like has their greatest opportunities come from having great defense. And for a lot of people, that's a difficult thing to grasp because we've lost games and things haven't bounced the Crimson Tide's way. But for those that have weary thoughts that think that this team isn't going to make it far for whatever reason, I say just turn back to the defense. There's 3 points to this team overall that have helped it get to the point it is, and it all comes kind of down to what JR said about adjusting. But this team attacks the rim while keeping a focus on the threes. I mentioned this on my show Off the Edge on Monday. The winning shot for Alabama against LSU was a Euro step. It was not a 3-pointer. LSU went for the 3-pointer and lost. So, Alabama can get things done in different ways. The 3-point shot has not been there for Alabama for the past month. They've really struggled from 3 for the past month, guys, and they just won a tournament.
I'm going to completely agree with you there. I'm not going to try to derail you too much. I wanted to look up the NCAA basketball team defensive efficiency, and it looks like if I did my math right, there's only 5 teams that are in the tournament that have a better defensive efficiency than the University of Alabama. I think that's going to be Houston, Loyola, Chicago. They didn't make it. Utah State, San Diego State, Tennessee, Winthrop, and Gonzaga. So that's 7. There's 7 teams.
So one team that's ranked even above a 5 seed, and that's Gonzaga, who didn't play anybody, as you said.
Yeah, the highest rated team that's going to be Houston is in the top 3.
Seed.
They are a 2 seed. They are top 3 in defensive efficiency.
Well, again, I did catch their game for the American Conference tournament, and they pounded Cincinnati by 30. Now, I don't know what that says about Cincinnati or what that says about Houston, because I don't know much about American basketball, and I'm sure everybody listening doesn't know much either, or at least most people. But nonetheless, it's hard to gauge with those teams because of the conferences they played in. And those are the only teams that are like seeded in line with Alabama who played in the SEC. This isn't football SEC. We've acknowledged the Big 10 and the Big 12 better basketball conferences, but nonetheless, the SEC is still great, right?
I'm going to agree with you there too. The league that you were just talking about,
American,
the American. I forget those tiny little leagues, those group of 5 leagues. UConn was just in that league. They had not been doing well over the past 5 years, for men's basketball.
Yeah.
So if that tells you anything, that probably tells you that the Americans are a pretty tough conference.
Well, the American Conference is the peak of the group of 5 conferences. Like if they were gonna make it a Power 5 conference, if they were gonna make it Power 6 conferences, the American Conference would be the first one to go in.
I would argue that it would be the Big East with Villanova and Georgetown, Syracuse, St. John's.
Okay, the Big East doesn't also have a football conference, so it could never be a Power 6.
Oh, I thought we were just talking about basketball. That's kind of my fault too. Sorry.
Miscommunication there. The Big East doesn't exist in football anymore. And this is a basketball conversation, so you're fine for thinking that. But the American would actually have a legitimate grasp on that because they perform well in both sports. I mean, regardless of how people feel about the American and feel about the UCF's 2017 national championship, Cincinnati, Central Florida, a lot of these teams out of that conference have been playing incredibly great in all of their sports, but nonetheless have they've stayed relevant too, and that's a point. And then you look at like Louisville moved out of the American Conference to the ACC, so they're moving around and they're being I think one of the better conferences that could potentially create a Power 6 conference style.
At one point before UConn decided to go to the Big East, and I know this because my roommate is a UConn grad, the American was pushing and making a lot of merchandise that said phrases like the Power 6.
Yeah.
To get that phrase going and try to get more people to say Power 6 instead of Power 5. I thought that was just kind of funny and ridiculous.
Well, all it takes is perception, but it also takes success too. Cincinnati can't lose to Georgia. UCF can't fall off the face of the earth and hire Gus Malzahn.
Yeah, but that's like an industry standard term. Is Power 5. That's just
right.
An industry standard term. You're not just going to change that with some T-shirts.
Right, but as long as the perception is what the perception is, because the Pac-12 is only part of the Power 5 because of history, right? Like, they haven't done a damn thing since the college football playoff came around, except go to the first one and get pounced out of the next one. Like,
they used to be good at basketball, but now they're at that too.
All the teams have converged, and they're all in the same level in that conference. And I'm sure basketball might be the same way, but at least in football, they're all so close together that they just beat the hell out of each other, and they all finish 8-4. You know what I mean? Like nobody can rise above because of that. And it's funny that that's what it takes to create a power conference, is to have somebody rise above and dominate the conference. But nonetheless, if you can't get somebody on a national stage to perform well, then nobody's going to think highly of your conference.
Well, that tells you something about the Pac-12 because, we kind of rip on the Pac-12 down here in the SEC country. But
of course,
you know what? They got 12 teams that are consistent. Do they still only have 12 teams? They are the Pac-12.
Yeah, they only have 12
okay.
teams.
But, they do that bull crap sometimes. But, at least they have 12 teams that are consistent. I can't tell you when Missouri is going to win more than 6 games.
Hey, that's
I can't tell
too,
you.
Right there.
I can't. I just can't.
Well, it's how often have we seen a switch like we have with Arkansas in the SEC? Now, Arkansas was bad for a long time. Don't get me wrong, but they finally flipped the switch and look like they may have been able to turn something around and create some success for themselves. But how long has it been since we've seen a real switch like that? It's been Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Florida at the top of this thing for what seems like the better part of 2.5 decades, and even still, like, Alabama's been at the forefront of that for just as long as any of it. We got to run to a break because we went way over, but we'll come back and wrap up Southern Fried Sports. I'm Jacob Harrison filling in for Travis Reier, and that's J.R. Moore filling in for me on the other side of the glass. We'll be right back here on Tide 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
The sky will stay mostly cloudy this afternoon. The high today 64. For tonight and tomorrow, occasionally cloudy and cool. Tonight's low 45, the high tomorrow 60. And on Saturday, a brighter day. The sky partly to mostly sunny, the high 63. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 56 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide football.
Alabama touchdown.
Only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
What a song. What a song. What a way to wrap everything up. He's been all over the spectrum, ladies and gentlemen. It's J.R. Moore. So 2 things that have happened during the break. Well, the first may have happened a little bit earlier than that. But Anthony Schwartz, the Auburn wide receiver, reportedly has run a 4.26 40 at Auburn's Pro Day today. That's probably the most exciting thing that's going to happen over there today. But nonetheless, Anthony Schwartz, the speedster, getting it done on the clocks. And then the other one, for our guy Tua Tagovailoa. He gets his new center, Matt Skura, on a 1-year deal to the Miami Dolphins, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens. And one J.R. Moore, not a fan of Matt Skura. So that'll do it for today. We didn't get to the draft talk, but nonetheless, we have had fun talking about the NCAA tournament. Plenty more to get into tomorrow night on my show, Off the Edge, on Tide 100.9 from 7 to 9 p.m. And then you can also join me, James Ludeman, and Bryant Horn for the brand new show, Saturday Morning Showdown, Saturdays, every single Saturday morning from 8 to 11 a.m., where we will throw down on all the latest sports topics. Join me tomorrow on the live streams for Off the Edge. Until then, I'm Jacob Harrison, filling in with Travis Reier, who will be back tomorrow to fill in for his usual seat right here on Southern Fried Sports. Have a good afternoon, ladies. Enjoy.
Sit in my desolate room. No lights, no music. Just ever killed everyone. I'm away forever, but I'm feeling better. How do I feel? What do I say? It all goes away. How do I feel? What do I say?